Hello and welcome to the 250th episode of the Brave Feminine Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Hamilton, and it is such a pleasure to have you here with me today. We're going to have some fun in this episode. 250 of them. That is a massive achievement, and I really do feel proud about it. The other interesting thing was I massively procrastinated about recording this episode. And the irony in that is I help people with procrastination, but it really got me. And so I did something that has actually been one of my biggest lessons throughout my career. I asked for help. I grew up as this fiercely independent girl off at boarding school. I got used to relying on myself. No surprise, ultimately, that I ended up as a CEO running a company. That kind of control sort of thing and help maybe being seen as a sign of weakness was me. But I learned and I grew and I realized that actually asking for help is one of the strongest things you can do. And so last week, as a cohort of our influence CEOs graduated, we sat around at dinner, we had the most amazing meal. I shared the fact I was procrastinating and they said, interview me. So let me jump into what we're going to do for this episode. But before I go there, why Brave Feminine Leadership? Right back when I named this and I interviewed the very first people, why did I call it that? And to be honest, I think it was because it felt a little bit controversial. You don't necessarily see those things together. And the audience either loved it, were intrigued by it, or knew immediately it wasn't for them. But the overwhelming response was, I love those words together. And I'll say, let me share how I use it. I mean, it's got a really practical purpose for me because in the early days, I felt so awkward about saying brave feminine leadership or describing myself as a brave feminine leader. But actually, it became really important and I own it today. But I used it to help me do scary things. I used it to help me find the courage to do stuff that I didn't want to do, that I was scared of doing. And for me at the time, I was transitioning from a role as a CEO, leading a large organization, into today what is a portfolio career where I do a whole range of rewarding things. But I would say to myself at times, what would a brave feminine leader do? And my response would be she would make that call. She would take that step. She would say no to that thing, or she would say yes to that thing. So that was how I used it. So I could single out on this journey so many people, and it feels slightly unfair to do it, but I am going to call out three as a starting point. And the first one I'm going to call out is Meredith Hellicar. Meredith was amazing in just believing in this from day one, which gave me a lot of confidence, but in also opening up her incredible network, which gave us the opportunity to listen to these incredible leaders, so many diverse leaders. And I will forever be grateful for Meredith on that. I also want to call out Ricky Novak because during COVID, on one of our sort of lockdown periods, we managed to sneak a walk together. And I really tentatively said to her, I've kind of got this idea and I'm wondering if I should do it. And I'm wondering if you might like to be interviewed. And she was just absolutely yes, and absolutely we must do it. And then she proceeded to open up her network to me too. People are so generous. They are so generous. We just have to be prepared to ask sometimes. And what's the worst that can happen? They say no. That has only happened really rarely, and it's probably another story for another day. The other person is Professor Laura Cray. I took the Women in Leadership program that she runs at Berkeley during COVID, and it had a really profound impact on me and helped me reflect back on aspects of my career. And I thought this stuff really matters. So Laura has, has become a friend. Like we catch up when she travels over to Australia. She's opened her incredible network to all of these incredible academics and researchers who are sharing amazing things. And each part of those becomes like another little piece of the puzzle, another penny drop moment that just continues to expand, I think, our understanding on this and our opportunity in this as well. So, what are we actually going to do today? At the end of every single episode, if you've been here listening, thank you. But I ask the same question every time, and I have from day one. I ask, what does brave feminine leadership mean to you, and does it need to change? And I've got well over 200 responses to that. And I rarely share what it actually means to me. And I mean, the reason for that is the more important thing is, what does it actually mean to you? That's actually the point of all of this. What does it mean to you? So today, and in a minute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play for you responses from 4 incredible leaders. So the first one is the wonderful Sue Price. Sue Price was one of my very first clients when I decided to start this, and we've just built this terrific relationship that's moved into a friendship for sure. So Sue, thank you. Your answer's brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to share it. We're going to hear from Mel Gilver. So, hello, Mel Silver. That was mixing up Google and Silver. Mel Silver is the managing director of Google, so we're going to hear her response. We're going to hear from Jane Herdlicker, who at the time was the CEO of Virgin. She's now the CEO of Endeavour. And we're also going to hear from Elizabeth Broderick. So Liz Broderick, many of you will know, was, I think, our longest serving sex discrimination commissioner here in Australia, and she launched Champions of Change. So for those of you, I think we all can probably recall that. So 4 incredible people that are going to share their responses firstly. Then I'm going to speak briefly to 4 CEOs, 4 brave feminine leaders who are actually leading organisations and all embodying brave feminine leadership to me. And I'll introduce each of them as we get there. And then I'm going to round this conversation out with my wonderful co-founder, Kelli Hayes, where her responses to the questions make both of us tear up. We do, so you'll hear it. I thank people at the end of this podcast, but if this podcast has helped you, then say it, share it, leave a review. Let's make some noise about this. So now I invite you to join with me and let's hear the response to the question, what does brave feminine leadership mean to you? And we're going to kick off with Sue Price.
So for me, being brave is absolutely being yourself. So as a brave feminine leader, you need to be able to be really clear about who you are and don't make yourself small, and step up and continue to step up and actually ask for help. So a big part of being brave, which was a big part of what the work we went through and the subsequent thinking, and was it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to network, because I'd never really embraced the networking thing unless it was work related. But it's be brave and reach out and find your people and find other women or other people who can really support you. So for brave is you don't have to keep doing it as you're doing it. Step up, don't make yourself small, and really reach out and ask for help. And then in terms of how does it need to change? No, I don't think so. I think it just needs to be accelerated. I want to know that my girls, when they step into that workplace, some of the battles that we've had to face into, I don't believe they won't be there, but I think there'll be less. And they'll be more empowered to deal with them than I was when I stepped out of university when I was 18 years old. So it just needs to continue, and it needs to, I get so excited when I see the rhythm and the voice and the extraordinary young women who are actually being really brave, yes, around, more around sexual harassment, etc. But I actually want to see more of them be brave about themselves in corporate life and just keep the momentum going.
The next person we're going to listen to is Mel Silver, so the MD from Google.
I think it's exactly what we were just talking about. I think it's being able to be you. That all of you, not the best of you, all of you. It is exhausting, I think, for women to have to come in and pretend to be the work version of yourself after you've just literally run a marathon to get into the, front door of the office. So it's brave to be vulnerable. It's brave to share what's going on in your life. It's brave to be very loud and proud about leaving, and it's brave to be the boss of your boundaries. But don't let anyone doubt your output. So that's what it means to me. I think that, if I was to summarize 99% of the conversations I have with women in some sort of coaching capacity, they always end in the, please don't make me go searching under the rug for all of the great things you do.
Yes.
right? And bravery in just being upfront with what you're proud of,
Yeah.
you know, it feels like it's brave, but gosh, you're doing me a favor. Like, I don't have time. I don't have time to go hunting under the rug. So do me a favor. And that funny, you know what, that flip actually helps people kind of get there. Like, I'm doing Mel a favor if I tell her all the great things that I'm doing. Yes, you are. Yeah, so I think that bravery is in the vulnerability of it all.
The next one is Jane Herdlicker, so the former CEO of Virgin, who is CEO of Endeavour today.
Look, I think, to me, brave feminine leadership is about staying true to yourself and pursuing a journey of leadership. And you do have to be brave and courageous and a bit fearless in the way that you do that. But staying true to yourself and making sure that when you have the opportunity, you're also looking for ways to help others in their journey, to me, is important. And how I define brave feminine leadership for me today is feeling really comfortable, in fashion, feeling very comfortable, in all sorts of public forums and arenas, feeling really comfortable talking about the importance of diversity. We wouldn't be in the position we are in as a business today at Virgin Australia if we didn't have a really diverse mix of people sitting around the table solving some of the toughest problems you could ever have to stare into as a business. And, I think that is just essential. And so staying true to who you are, being very comfortable expressing yourself, and very confident leading through all sorts of circumstances and building amazing diverse teams behind you and helping others behind you be the best version of themselves and creating a pathway for other women in the process is important.
And the last of the four is Elizabeth Broderick.
For me, brave feminine leadership, it's about a way of walking in the world. And I believe brave feminine leadership can be exhibited by people of all genders. It's not just a women's thing. What does it tell me? It tells me that you're harnessing your emotions instead of trying to silence them. So often we see leadership presented in a dispassionate way. For me, brave feminine leadership is about harnessing everything that I am, all my emotions and everything else, and using it to create positive change in the world. So that's about vulnerability. It's about empathy. It's about fear. It's about courage, all those things. When I lead, and I lead with others, I'm not saying leadership for me is not me being out in front or whatever. It's me being deeply connected at a human level to the goodness that sits under the brokenness, if I can put it like that, and working with others through an emotional as much as a physical connection to create positive change in the world. I think that's what brave feminine leadership is. And when the brave part of it, I think you become braver over time, is my experience. I mean, courage is like a muscle. The more you use it, the easier it becomes. And I've just found that in my work. If I think about some of the situations I've had to navigate through in the last couple of years, I never would have been up for that 15 years ago. I would have been kind of in a little mess on the floor in fear about it. So Brene Brown and others say, look, courage is not about no fear. It's about having fear, but being prepared to step in anyway. And I think the more you do that, the easier it becomes.
Well, welcome to the microphone, Sally. Sally Clifford I'm here with. Sally's the Managing Director of Matrix Consulting. So they provide capacity building consulting, training and evaluation services to support the non-profit sector in the top end of Australia. And Sally's also a member of our CEO Mastermind Influence. Sally, it is wonderful to have you here with me.
Great. Yeah, I'm really thrilled to be part of this 250th episode. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Sal, the first question I want to ask is, we've just heard from four incredible leaders in terms of Jane and Sue and Liz and Mel Silver. How do you respond to the messages you've heard them say?
Yeah. Look, it was great to hear them again because I listened to all of those podcasts when they came up. So it was kind of like revisiting old friends. Um, I mean, I suppose I particularly enjoyed Elizabeth Broderick's comment around, courage being like a muscle, because I really relate to that because I think you just have to keep on practicing and practicing and practicing that and start small and then work up to bigger things. I mean, of course, they're very articulate in relation to their responses. And because when I've heard the podcasts, I've tried to answer the question myself as I've been walking along, and it's much more, it's got much more detail and loose ends than what they have said. But I definitely relate to the sense of whether you use the word, vulnerability or being yourself. I mean, I think I do relate to that notion of that it's the brave element of those statements more so than the feminine element, which I think I would replace more with, human. But that's just my read on that statement. And yeah, I definitely, and certainly Sue Price's comment about asking for help. I think I often have a phrase in my head is like, ask for what you need. Ask for what you need. Like, and that it could be something small like, can you help, read this thing? Or it could be, I'm really struggling with this certain conflict. I need to speak a little bit more clearly about that. So, yeah, I found all of them great to kind of revisit and think about those ideas again.
Yeah. I got a shiver when you said listening to the podcast again was like welcoming old friends. I feel like that when I listen to themselves. So that's gorgeous.
Yep.
Now, leadership has always been a huge part of your life. It probably feels like a natural kind of segue to ask you about that now, having just finished with Brave Leadership. What does that mean when you say it's always been a big part of your life?
Yeah. Look, obviously we shared a funny story before, which is I've often found myself becoming the chair of an organization or the leader of a group, not because that was my intent at all to go in and start something, but that I've been invited into a group. And then there's sometimes chaos ensuing before me where agenda isn't followed, where there's no decisions made, where people just keep kind of circling on and the time keeps going on. And I just have like a physical reaction to it. I just can't be in the space in amongst all of that kind of uncertainty. And yes, there's flagging control issues there, but I suppose it is about respecting people's time and that they've chosen to come here. And I think it's just a respectful thing to realize that we need to come together and get an outcome and kind of move forward. And so that's how come I've often become the chair or the coordinator or the manager or, whatever.
So it's not really an accidental chair because you get into this chaos situation and take control of it, but you're probably ending up with more chair roles than you planned.
Yeah. And there's not a whole lot of people who put their hand up for those roles. And
Yeah.
I like those roles. Once I'm in them, I actually, quite like them. But I recognize this thing that happens and I go, oh, this thing's happening again.
So you have been a really long time listener of the Brave Feminine Leadership podcast, which I'm incredibly grateful for. I know what one of your favourites is, and we've heard her voice already today. So you can share that. What are your favourites? But what do you get out of listening? Why do you listen?
Yeah, well, yes, I've listened for a long time. Look, it serves a few different purposes. One is in amongst a busy job, it's hard to pin down professional development, and going and doing professional development is hard. And so listening to a 40-minute podcast actually is achievable for me. And I often do a lot of driving in my role. So listening to it in the car. So it's the bite-size micro learning world that the podcast sort of fits into. And I encourage a lot of other people to do that as well. And I mean, I do like the way that you allow people to talk and let their voice come out. And so you do get to have this deep dive into somebody else's experience. And for people like Jane Herdlicker, who has navigated a lot of difficult terrain, and hearing how she has done that, I think is, really valuable. And then the other, well, it was a series actually that I really enjoyed a couple of years ago. You did a series around 5 leaders who were, who realized that they were, ADHD later in their life.
Yes.
And what I liked about that was, I hadn't heard that before in terms of leaders talking about that, and that what were the practical things that they did to enable them to continue to be leaders and to flourish in their role, and the kind of things that they asked their team to do to support them and acknowledge that. So that was kind of like new knowledge. And I thought elevated also the skill set that people with ADHD bring into a workplace and the incredible benefits that can bring.
I love doing it. It was one of my favourites too. And I think it really we've heard the words from the people that I called out earlier about brave and vulnerable, and, all of those things I think were displayed in that series as well by some incredible leaders. So who are your female role models? Do we have enough female role models?
Well, I don't think you can ever have enough. I mean, I did think about this a lot, and I often hear people, and with all respect to Jacinda Ardern, but I often hear people just default to Jacinda Ardern. And look, she's great, but she actually doesn't meet my list when I look at who are the people that I look at and go, you really inspire and motivate me to keep on going. And look, probably there's two piles here. One would be, I have a lot to do with Indigenous Australia and lots of female leaders in that space. And when I look at people like the late Rhoda Roberts, and then just the current NAIDOC Person of the Year, Pat Turner, they're people who have just been beavering away for years and years and years and years and years to elevate achievement or make systemic changes, and they just are determined despite whole manner of kind of barriers. They just keep on going. And so I find that inspiring. And then the other person, which is kind of an unusual thing, but I actually think about her quite a lot, is Nicola Roxon, who was federal minister who got the plain packaging for cigarettes packets over the line. And I mean, that was a significant change. It was kind of done in the background. It was about looking at systems and players and stakeholders and huge risk in amongst that. But she was determined to do that and was able to bring other people along with her to make that happen. That's a significant systemic change. And then she stepped away. And she went, no, there's other things I want to focus on now. And I think that bravery to go, I've done that, and now there's other things that are important, and I don't have to keep on being the politician, forever. I moved on to other things. And I think the decision to know, when do you stop doing what you're doing? When is that enough? And when you go to the next thing, I think that's a real skill.
Sal, I knew I would love your answer. I really love your answer. That's absolutely gorgeous. I think about, I love the influence. So, I'm the group I'm speaking to here are all CEOs, and I love the influence you can have on your workforce and your culture. And I wonder what matters to you about being a role model for future leaders.
I don't think about it so much as being a role model, but I do think a lot about being yourself and being genuine. And I'm loath to use the authentic word, but I think being able to be comfortable in your own skin, in using your own accent, using your own phraseology that describes how you want to see the world, and being comfortable with that, being comfortable with where you come from and what history you bring into where you are, and not feeling like you have to fit whatever might be the package of the leader, I think that is hugely influential, because other people are self-judging all the time about, well, that's not me. I don't look like that. I don't speak like that. I don't wear those clothes. But when I look at those people that I admire, part of their ability to cut through is because they present a different message, and it's a message that people can relate to in all different places. So I think the bravery element comes in knowing who you are and being true to yourself in the face of lots of oncoming winds, which is you should be like this, and just sticking true.
Do you think about legacy, in the role now? Do you think, does it matter to you?
I mean, I think about doing good work and having an impact in the organizations that we work in. Yeah, sure.
You've got a very purpose-led organization.
Yeah. I mean, I passionately believe in remote Australia, whatever that looks like, whether that is Aboriginal Australia or, farmers and country and all of that sort of thing. And I think there's incredible innovation that happens in that space. And lots of the things that Australia is trying to work towards has a place in remote and regional Australia and is drawing from there. So if we can in some way support the corporate structures that, as in organizations, who are supporting communities in those places, then I think that can, change things for those people who live in those areas.
So it's been such a privilege for Kelli and I to get a chance to work with you. I just wonder, when you imagine the future, you can pick how far in advance that is, but what will brave feminine leadership mean?
Yeah. Look, I think the word feminine is not contested. That's too extreme a word, but I think what that means to people is different for everybody. And I think that I think you can define feminine in whatever way means something for you, because there are plenty of men who would have feminine kind of qualities. And so I think that's about humanity and being able to embrace the person that you are. But I do think that being brave and courageous is important, because there are a lot of headwinds for people leading now in different kinds of spaces, and being able to ensure that we have voices coming up from the ground is really important. And I think if we can raise all the boats up, then that's good. And I suppose it's sort of brave leadership and brave human leadership, I think is the future that I'm kind of interested in.
Welcome to the microphone, Lisa Lynch. Brilliant to have you with me.
Great to be here. Thanks, Mel.
So Lisa is the CEO of the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine. So they provide highly specialised services that support the community in complex and often challenging circumstances. This includes clinical forensic medical services, forensic science, forensic pathology and death investigation, tissue banking and donation, as well as research, education and training that contributes to the practice both nationally and internationally. Lisa has always worked at the intersection of health, social justice and our community, and is a board member of Women's Health Victoria and a member of the Consultative Council of Obstetric and Paediatric Mortality and Morbidity, and a member of our CEO Mastermind Influence. Lisa, that was a lot, and no surprise, because you do a lot. Lisa, I've just shared with you the 4 wonderful guests sharing their response to my final question about brave feminine leadership. Can I ask you, how do you respond to those 4 responses?
Yeah. What I really noticed, Melissa, is how similar they were, how they were all kind of saying similar things. They're talking about that freedom that comes from being able to be yourself and kind of be able to kind of bring your authentic self to work, not having to be someone else in order to sort of fit in, and really not being afraid to ask for help. I particularly loved Elizabeth's comment about courage is a muscle, because that they really spoke to me, actually. I think that every difficult conversation, every time I've stood by my values, every time I've taken a big deep breath and spoken up, that's practicing courage, and it is a muscle, and we do need to build it. It takes time. So that one in particular, I really, really liked.
You have been a long-term listener of our podcast, and I would just love to know, do you have any favourites that stand out for you?
So only 249 to choose from, Melissa?
That's right. There's only 249. Can you remember any?
No, look, to be honest, my first response is that I don't necessarily have any favourites. I have been a long time listener, and I've recommended this pod to many leaders over the years. And the reason for that is that you uncover the reality of leadership. Like, you're celebrating successful women, absolutely, but they're talking about what's real and messy and hard, as well as what's wonderful and incredible. And I've really liked that. So there's been many a time when I've been driving home from work or walking home, and I've gone, oh my God, thank God somebody else has experienced this or thought about this in the same way, or is going through the same kind of struggles. If I did have to pinpoint, I really, really loved the recent Chief People Officer series. That was a different perspective from me. And it opened my eyes up to really the value of that Chief People Officer at the strategic table, and what they, just their extraordinary value that they bring to an organisation, which I knew, but it kind of reinforced it and gave me a different perspective. You also did one recently with Penny. I can't remember her last
Penny
name, but
Picasso.
yeah. And she named a feeling that I'd been feeling around AI, and it was different from other pods that I'd been listening to with AI. So I'd recommend that as a listen. And years ago, Holly Ransom, I just found that podcast riveting, actually. And there was this great formative story from her childhood about her grandmother, which really spoke to that. The standard you walk by is the standard you accept. And, she clearly demonstrated that personally and professionally. She stands by that. That was one I really enjoyed. She was a bit
fantastic.
Bad.
And I love over the years when I've received a little message from you as well, just letting me know, that one was really good. So It's always great getting those. Lisa, you and I were talking about female role models, and I know it's hard for you to call out who that might be, right? But my question is, do we have enough?
No, we don't. I think the evidence is clear on this one, isn't it? There is not enough women in leadership roles, and not enough women in executive roles or at the board table. And I would also challenge that too, to say there's not enough diverse women. I think, I keep, equity is one of the things that really drives me. And so, I think it's not just good enough to ensure that we have more women and more gender diversity and in those leadership roles, but also that we are championing and creating spaces for more diverse women to be at those tables as well. So it's certainly more visible women in leadership than when I first started my career, but no way is it enough. 51% of the population, not good enough.
Come on.
1% of the leadership roles. Yeah.
Lisa, I love the influence, as a CEO, the influence that you can have on your workforce and your culture and the lives of the people, on your team. What matters to you about being a role model for future leaders?
Yeah. I've worked for incredible leaders, but they thought they had to fit into a particular mold to succeed. And I remember one of your podcasts or interviews where someone even pretended to play golf.
Sally Hayden, yeah.
In order to fit into the leadership culture. So if I can role model anything, I hope that I model that you can lead by being yourself. You can be authentic, and you can be kind and compassionate, and care about the people you work with. And I can still do all of that and make tough decisions and support the organisation to succeed. And I can do it by being true to who I am. So that's what I would like to role model.
Are you thinking about legacy in the role? Like, does leaving a legacy matter to you?
Sort of. I struggle with the concept in some ways of legacy, but what I think about when I think about that is whether I've helped create teams or organizations and spaces where people feel valued and heard. I think about some of the key programs that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of or help kind of lead and create and innovate over the years that do have impact and lasting impact on communities and families, and that have created kind of helped to try to address that health equity. And that's very important to me. And I want to continue doing that whilst I'm working. So that of sorts is a legacy. And I want to know that I've helped leaders develop so they can continue to have that impact as well. So I guess that's kind of legacy.
Yeah. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I feel like I've said this already in some ways, but it's really, really true. I wish I knew that I didn't have to become someone else to be a leader. If I think about those my early leadership, I did try to take on a bit of a persona and did try to fit in a little and kind of behave in a certain way and, watched how I was supposed to be or dress and act and do. And I actually think I got better as a leader when I stopped trying to be the leader I thought I should look like. So I wish I could go back and tell myself to just be myself.
It's such a lovely statement to say, and I know that's come up so many times over the years. People respond better to you. Like that's the magic, right? Like who you are.
And how can you act for 8 hours a day? Like yeah.
No. The only caveat I put around that is making sure there's a bit of self-awareness, right? Like it's okay to be you, but as long as you're aware
That's right.
The impact of you. So Les, when you imagine the future, I don't know how far ahead that is for you, but when you imagine the future, what will brave feminine leadership mean?
I really hope that brave feminine leadership is just recognised as leadership. So all the things that we talk about when we say, kindness and compassion and collaborative and vulnerable and warm and engaging, all of those things, they are human traits. They're not female traits. And, I think about this more, increasingly complex world, increasingly complex globally, way more time doing digital and online than ever before. And for me, I think those traits are they're going to have their moment because they're going to be incredibly, incredibly important in organisations. And I think that's going to be the one thing that differentiates workplaces, actually. Those leadership traits that are human traits, we do probably see them more in females, but definitely, I think it's going to have its moment in this kind of increasingly digital world.
Welcome to the microphone, Emma Walsh. Good to have you with me.
Thanks, Melissa. Good to be here.
So Emma's the CEO of the Moya Group, and they're a specialist recruitment firm focused on finance, accounting and ESG, and they're one of the first names CFOs think of when they're seeking out high caliber finance and accounting professionals across all sectors. Emma, so good to have you here. We've just listened to the responses around Brave Feminine Leadership from 4 incredible leaders. Can I just ask you, what is your response to the way they have answered those questions?
Well, it comes from a great kind of depth of sort of experience, and also just reacting in a marketplace and not always coming out very favourably. But what they did all have in common was they made a decision, they acted on things, and they looked for the future and looked for the opportunities within that.
So I wanted to dig in with you. It's been like going down memory lane, listening to a lot of those podcasts and things like that along the way. But for you, something a little bit different. I mean, it's been fabulous having you as part of the CEO community on influence. I'd love to know what was the most impactful thing for you throughout that time.
I think it's been challenged by a group of very smart, very capable women and kind of leaning into being a little bit kind of uncomfortable as well. You've got that kind of support, but at the same time, you've got that kind of growth that's coming from that. And I was probably, you know, the youngest sort of CEO in regard to kind of years of experience. So it was good for me just to use my effective listening skills and just to hear about people's kind of experiences and journeys. Very, very diverse group of people, but obviously with diverse group of people and diverse industries comes some certain sort of themes, and those themes are around just sort of encouraging, creating a great kind of workplace, keeping kind of revenue going, and having good vision for what you do. But again, it doesn't always run smooth as well. But I think you need to kind of act on things quicker as well when there is some sort of troubled times and some headwinds ahead. So I took that out just to have a go and lean in quicker.
Yeah. Well done, Em, on the first months of your kind of tenure in the role as well. We were talking about female role models at one point, and, do you think we have enough female role models? Who would you call out?
I don't think we can ever have enough. And it's nice. It's good to look on a kind of global stage as well, but I think it's also really impactful and really kind of powerful if we're looking within kind of Australia, and that can come from any sort of industry as well. There's some great people doing some sort of great things out there. And I think business, but whether it's business, whether it's sport, whether it's younger people as well. But I think this kind of podcast gives a platform for that. And yeah, there's all, and I think for that kind of next group of young people kind of coming through as well, they're going to be facing sort of different sort of challenges. But yeah, it's really, really important to keep sort of emphasizing, keep sort of telling these stories of kind of women that have got a lot to sort of add to society and a lot to add to sort of business as well.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I love the fact that, I'm talking today to 4 incredible CEOs who have each got the ability to have so much influence on their workforce, on their culture, on the lives of the people in your team. What matters to you about being a role model for future leaders?
I think showing up, and it's kind of having a very kind of clear direction, making people feel sort of value. I always think, if you can get your sort of, and I'm not going to use the word kitchen, I'll use the word shed. If you can get your shed in order and you can create that kind of environment for people to kind of thrive in, then that's half the job done as well. So enabling them to kind of make really good, clear decisions, and lead with kind of confidence in whatever they do, because everyone's leading in some way. They're leading a client, they're leading a candidate in what we do. They know they kind of, so that sort of structure is really, really important for me. And that shed, just get that shed. That shed will never be perfect, but there's got to be enough in place so they just feel valued, so they can back themselves, so they can confidently go out there, and help people. We always say at Moya Group, work is a big part of people's lives, and having a satisfying job is a big part of people's lives. You're at work a long time, and if I can create an environment where they're able to thrive, then they go home and thrive as well. So that's really important. I think the personal professional kind of blend, everyone comes to work with their whole self, and I think it's really important. Long are the days when I sort of started in recruitment that you leave everything at the door. Unrealistic. You need to know where people are, and you need to support that. You don't need to know everything, but you need to know enough.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the ability to influence not just the people within your own team. As I was listening to you then, I was thinking it's actually about the selection of the people in so many other workforces as well, and getting that match right as well, which is a fantastic opportunity. What do you think about legacy? Like, do you think about the legacy you want to leave? Is that on your mind at all as a CEO?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think I think of our kind of model. When someone's looking for a role, it's a very vulnerable position they're in, and it's very kind of stressful. And if you can make an impact on that candidate And at the same time, if you can kind of give people the opportunity to learn and grow and feel valued and contribute within your own sort of team, then that's a really kind of it's a really strong position, and it's an excellent one. That's what you want. You want people to just grow, learn, thrive, and back themselves and have a go and be surrounded by people of sort of similar sort of values. And I think that kind of value piece is really, really important. And, when you're looking for a job, it is that kind of values within that kind of organization that's going to be the most important decision you'll make.
You and I were talking off camera before around my own lessons as a younger leader and kind of wishing I learned to ask for help earlier. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Ask for help. Ask for help and ask for advice and consultancy outside of your normal parameters. Look at it differently. Constantly look at it differently, because I haven't always done that. And the other thing is, lean in and make that kind of decision quicker, because I think, we all sort of sit and we want to. Stop, pause, and reflect is great to a point, but you've also just got to make that kind of decision. And we're in a very, very agile world. We're talking in our course of the new norm is 4-month cycles.
Yeah.
Agiles come into everything, and what we do, we call agile, forecasting and things like that. So it is just, leaning in quicker and making that kind of decision. So act sooner would be my main thing.
Emma, when you imagine the future, however far away that is for you when you imagine it, what will brave feminine leadership mean?
Brave feminine leadership will mean strength with empathy and leading through those two lenses. Strength in around courage, empathy in around compassion. We all work in people businesses. You've got to make those decisions. You've got to have a go. You've got to work in a very, very disrupted world. And you've got to kind of progress and look for the initiatives, look for the ideas, look for the opportunities, but you also need to balance that with the people side and ensuring that you're creating that kind of environment where people can learn, people can grow, people can be themselves, people can bring their whole self to work as well. And it does mean, making tough decisions on people as well, but it is that ultimate balance between strength and empathy.
Welcome to the microphone, Sandra Wallace. Wonderful to have you here with me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really good.
Pleasure. So Sandra is the founder and managing director at Artefact Heritage, fascinating organisation providing archaeological, cultural heritage management and environmental assessment services for both Aboriginal and historical non-Aboriginal sites. Sandra, we've just heard from these 4 incredible leaders sharing their perspective on brave feminine leadership. How do you respond to the responses that they shared?
Yeah, look, I really embrace them and I connect with them in lots of ways. So I guess being brave for me is, about being vulnerable, asking for help, having courage. And I think all those things are, even though that they're sometimes hard to do in the moment, there's probably something that underlies them all as well. So for me, all those things are about keeping on going in the face of your own uncertainty, whether that's personal uncertainty, people not necessarily seeing where your vision is going or agreeing with what you're doing. And for me, that's the brave part of it. So asking for help, I guess, having that work version of yourself, courage, being brave and having courage are all important, but you can only really articulate those things in your job when you just keep going.
You shared a beautiful thing with me about being nervous doing this sort of thing, right? You talked about your own leadership and sort of introversion. Tell me about that.
So, yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think some of the skills that you need as a leader are the things that make being a leader the most difficult. So having that empathy, being able to attune yourself to other people's I guess, emotional and mental state, what they need, understanding when you walk into a room what's happening, being able to have those kind of, I guess, super skills is what is really important to being a good functional leader, but they also make it really hard to put yourself out there in that environment where also where people rely on you, and where people expect you to be able to be strong and make decisions and have their back. When to do that, it's a personal cost, it's an emotional cost, and it's something that is both wonderful and terrifying at the same time. So for me, coming from a background of having social anxiety as a young person, quite badly, and that kind of affected my ability to do things, to then step into a leadership role. I think the only reason I could step into a leadership role was because having, social anxiety and being an introvert, I learned to push myself just to do normal things. So I developed that. I guess that's the courage as a muscle thing. I developed to be able to do normal things in life. And then once I was able to do that, the muscle got stronger. And then I just kept pushing myself. And before I knew it, I ended up, founder and a leader of a company of 60 people. And I'm like, how did that happen?
Yeah, fantastic. So
Yeah.
it's been so special for us having you as part of the community. What did you take out of being part of the influence community with the other CEOs?
Look, for me, it was about, I guess, camaraderie. Like, I think it is easy to feel alone as a leader. And I know that's something that we talked about. And it's just valuable to know that other people are living your experience as well and understand when you talk about it. For me, it was the connections and I guess the ability to share at that level that you can't always share in the work environment or even with friends, because I think until you're actually in that position, it's not an easy thing to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about female role models. Who would you call out, and do we have enough female role models?
Oh, look, it's funny because in thinking about that, I think, it's not necessarily an easy thing to think of female role models, which is difficult because it means we don't have enough. And I think a lot of the people I've seen as role models aren't female because they probably because as men they've had the opportunity to showcase those values and skills that I really admire. So things like, breaking boundaries, doing things differently, being out at the forefront, being entrepreneurs. And so I think, having female role models is difficult. I think for me is people who have broken the mold and who have gone against the flow. So people like Marsha Langton, the Bidra, amazing anthropologist and academic and journalist who is incredibly smart, confident. She says what she thinks and she doesn't care about the black flag, and I just completely admire that. So Marsha Langton is probably a huge female role model for me, and especially, with her background in anthropology and advocating for First Nations people. So, and there are others. I mean, I think there's a funny one who is probably no one's heard of, but Andrea Gill. She's actually a German techno artist. So she's a granny DJ. She's known as Tune Girl, and she actually started DJing in her 50s, right? And now she's 63 and she's going to these amazing shows. She's getting headlines and she's like really cool actually. And coming into my 50s, I've always worried as a woman that, there's not much chance to do these things anymore, that time is over. But seeing someone like Tune Girls, it's like, well, actually, I can still have this whole other life and do things that are crazy and influence the world. So she's amazing.
I'm off to look up Tune Girl straight after this. I love that
Yes, you
story
should.
already. Fantastic. I love, for me, the chance to spend time with all of you. I mean, you're the brave feminine leaders to me, right? The influence and the opportunity you have to, really improve the outcomes of your workforce, the culture, their lives. Do you think about being a role model to future leaders?
Yeah, I do. And like sometimes it does worry me because, I think the world is changing so quickly and I wonder how I can best service that for the young people in my team and the people coming up as leaders. For me, it's really like if I had to distill it down into one thing, it would be empowerment. So facilitating empowerment, agency for people, whether they're going to be leaders or not in the industry, or whether it's just about, I guess, leading their own destiny, or, you know, being able to have a good life. For me, it's about empowering people to understand that it's okay to make mistakes, that it's okay to do things differently, that it's okay to have an idea that maybe isn't the orthodoxy. So, I mean, it's kind of a good thing in a way, but it's also difficult when you're trying to run an organization and you're encouraging people not to always follow authority or to have different ideas. So we have that tension in the organization that can be, you know, but that's the whole tension for me in running an organization is, you know, how do you run an organization in a way that you can, within organizational models that have to work in this system, you know, you have to connect with other organizations. There's certain ways you have to do things, but how can, at the same time, you push the boundaries and do things differently and want to break the mold? So for me, that's a really big tension.
It's a beautiful tension. I mean, for you also, I'm sure legacy is important. I mean, as a founder and a managing director, what's the legacy part? Do you think about that?
Yeah, like it's something actually that haunts me as well as excites me. So, I mean, for me, legacy or contribution to a better world is really the whole point of it all. Like for me, there's no other reason to be in business. I think, you know, it's about, I'm goal driven, but it's really the goal for me is, you know, to do something that matters, and that matters, you know, even if it's to a small population, that it matters. So, I guess it does matter a lot, the legacy, but it's also hard to push for something that I really believe in, that I can that I'll look back on and think, well, that was worth all the hard times.
Yeah.
So there's a balance too between, again, I guess it's between legacy and personal cost. You know, there's a drive to create a better world and do something differently and to pull people along on that journey and enrich their lives. But then it's like, how does that impact me and my life in positive and negative ways?
You're passionate about creativity and leadership, especially in women. What do you mean by that?
So I think there's different ways of looking at creativity. Like I'm a big believer in creativity personally, and you know, being able to be creative, whether that's art or writing or lots of outlets. And I think that's good for you, you know, in your personal growth and your ability to be a good leader. But creativity for me is really that thing about looking at the world and seeing it differently. So looking at something and pulling that apart to maybe first principles or to look through it from your own unique perspective and say, what does this mean and how can I look at it differently and how can that, I guess, facilitate a creative outcome that's going to mean a better way to either do business or a better way to relate to people or a better way to live your life. So creativity is actually looking at things differently.
When you imagine into the future, however far that is for you, what will brave feminine leadership mean?
Um, well, I think for me, so I look at it a bit systemically, I suppose. So I think women have a superpower, and that superpower is that we have a lived feminine experience. So we live on the wrong end of the gender pay gap. We live the mental and emotional load, like we know what that feels like. And that's something that, you know, it can be a constraint. And we all know what it's like, you know, to be a mother or a carer and run a business and to have all those responsibilities. But the way I look at that is that it's actually a superpower if we look at it that way, because we can see things clearly in a way that maybe a man can't. So we can have this insight into the system and what we're doing that can unlock a series of solutions that maybe the man down the road can't see. So I would like for the female perspective to be seen as a superpower and something to be valued and cherished in a way that it means that we can look at the world differently, see solutions that others can't. And, you know, I think for me, when I hire people, I really value the female perspective in that hiring process. And I look for that and I look for those attributes. So for me, I think, eventually it might be nice to see a world where being a brave feminine leader is actually seen as a huge advantage in organisations.
And for the last part of this juicy conversation, welcome to the microphone to my wonderful co-founder, Kelli Hayes. Kelli's a former global CEO, leading 6,500 people, and today sits on boards across AI and ag tech. And in her spare time, works with me as part of the Brave group. Kelli, so good to have you here.
Thanks, Melissa, and I'm excited for this bigger moment, 250 interviews. It's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And I was reflecting back on the fact that by the time you and I have a long history of working together, we first met in 1999 as 4-year-olds, but our first, by the time we started working together, I had done those first 50 interviews. And I don't think I ever stopped to ask you, because you kind of reached out on the back of those, having watched them. What captured your attention about those in the first place?
Oh gosh. So in series one, I watched series one, honestly, because one of our former clients, Anne Sherry, you interviewed, and I really didn't know from working with Anne just what her perspective on leadership was. And so I watched, that particular interview and was quite stunned at what you managed to get Anne to share, because I didn't see Anne as someone that would share as much as what she did with you about how she felt about her approach to her career and leadership and some of the stories that she had. And I went, oh, this is interesting. There's some storytelling coming out here. And so I watched, a number of the others. I think Guillaume Swiggers was in that series. But then in particular, I landed on Sarah Harden, who... this was, you could tell with Sarah's that this was a COVID series, right?
Yeah.
She had someone sneaking down the back of her interview. But then she said things that I just went, oh my God, that's me. And I just immediately connected in with the situations that she was made herself so vulnerable to share.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, this is so different from, everything else I was listening to at the time was about how you should be and, the best people are this. But to have people tell stories of how they learnt to be a better leader, or how they learnt to better advocate for themselves, or how they learnt to undo imposter syndrome, that was at the time, it's 5 years ago, it was quite different for anything else. So yeah, I was hooked. And then, yes, of course, I had a colleague ask me, did I know someone who was doing something in this space? And I immediately just reached out to you and said, hey, what are you doing with this? Because, yeah, it was resonating.
And you make me laugh when you say that, because I think it was Sarah's husband sneaking by in the background. So I remember that moment on camera thinking to myself, oh God, am I going to have to edit this? How's it going to work? And it's like,
the fact you didn't was so authentic. And
that's it. It's just warts and all, right? And that's it.
Yeah.
And also the thing you said about people sharing and how vulnerable people were in those interviews. I'm going to say that has been and remains to this day to be the most surprising part of this. People are so generous and so willing to go there. You've been part of every series since, right? Right there, sort of beside me, cheering me along and picking me up as I need to be picked up to get, onto the next one. Who stands out as your favourites?
Oh gosh, now I'm going to share that you prepared me for this, which tortured me because I had to then choose. And I have listened and captioned and, done so many, but I actually have two that really stand out for me. And the first one is actually, he is a brave feminine leader, a true one. And that was Todd Harper from the Cancer Council of Victoria. And he made me at peace with imposter syndrome. He talked about the fact that imposter syndrome is there if we leverage it to propel us to better things. And he was the first person to talk about it, not demonize it, but say, actually, we've all got it, but is it making you move? And I thought, oh, that was just an unlock a click and a very different way of looking at that. Plus, he just did his interview. You felt his wisdom and his authenticity, but you also felt that when he taught culture and how to build those amazing cultures and workplaces, that he lived and breathed it every moment. So that was probably my number one, and it replaced my number one, my number one for ages. And I feel really rude actually having favourites. I'm just it's like I'm not supposed to. But Rhonda Morris, when she shared about being the double only, Rhonda talked so honestly about having to have conversations with people that weren't being had, and the bravery she showed from actually stepping into those conversations. But then there's this amazing tinge of self-awareness when pointing the finger, she said, actually, I was also in that too. And so how she approached shared accountability in these moments, these leadership moments with her colleagues, was just fascinating. There's so much wonderful about that particular interview, but yeah, they're the two if I have to choose two. But I wish you had given me 10.
That'll be another episode, so stay tuned for Kelly's top 10 in a future episode. Kel, we laugh sometimes because going back to when we first started working together, I shared at the start of this episode how Brave Feminine Leadership has maybe been controversial, and there's maybe a point to it being controversial, but for all the wonderful opportunities we've had, there's some people that haven't necessarily enjoyed it, and we won't say who, but share that experience.
Oh, and it was really early days, wasn't it? And we've created some fantastic programs, around this theme. And we were invited into a very large organisation who wanted to know all about our programs. And as I shared them, the feedback was, I love your programs, but we just can't work with a company that's called Brave Feminine Leadership because of the perception it will have around the organisation. And I was a bit flummoxed by that. And it was just too controversial for them.
I think it's time to go back. I think it's time to go
not
back.
quite sure what message it was sending, really.
So I think it's time to go back to that organisation and find out if, 4+ years down the track, they feel any different about the term Brave Feminine Leadership. It's been such an interesting journey, and it's been so fantastic to have you here with me. And I'm really looking forward to episode 251 and onwards, once we work out what they're going to be. But, while we're here right now, Kelly, share for me, when you think about Brave Feminine Leadership, what does it mean? But when you think about the future, what does Brave Feminine Leadership mean?
Yeah, if I start with what I think it means, and I say that because I get to hear everyone's definition. And so you've got to sit there and say, well, what does it actually mean for me? And for you and I, it's really grounded in our day-to-day work that we do. And it's very aspirational for us, I would say, as well. And so I see Brave Feminine Leadership as an attitude and a mindset, and it's for all people. That there is strength and value in leaning into the so-called softer elements of leadership and making them your superpower. And that's the one I landed on at 3 o'clock this morning.
I love how I gave you, no sleep overnight as you thought about this. But yeah, tell me.
But in the future, because everyone takes, you take something from each of the words. Brave, it means courage. It means it's courage to be this authentic person. Because, at the minute, being feminine leader is probably not fully acceptable, or we assume it's not from what we hear and see and take from our geopolitical experiences and what we've seen in the news and the media, and in the rise of politics and how the popularism is shaping a backward step, I would say, for feminine leadership and females and minorities in totality. So in the future, I would like to think that, that we don't need the brave, but I think that that's folly. right? I think we'll always need the brave when we're aspiring to incorporate tolerance and decency in how we approach people, that not just people we lead, but people that, you know, are around us in our communities. And I think in the future we will still need women at the table, because it's the women who, when they get there, open up the opportunities for others who don't have a voice. It's not just females, it's not just a gender thing. We've got so many cultures and minorities and people in the intersections that still don't get a voice. And it's only through women going first that they get in there. And so for the future, I'd like to think that we've Brave Feminine Leadership stands for what we all did.
Oh, wow. I might be getting teary hearing that. You too, I can see it on your face. So, you get a teary moment from the two of us as we end the episode. But I mean, this does really mean something for us in terms of why we're doing it. So thank you for being my partner.
Ultimate wingman.
Wow. Wow, 250 episodes.
Yeah, congratulations. Congratulations. And just parroting what you said at the beginning, I really appreciate all the speakers making themselves absolutely vulnerable, because it's a gift they're giving other people, you know. And if I think about, we go back to the people that I talked about, they gave me a gift.
Yeah. Me too. I just echo that. I thank all of the speakers. I thank all of the listeners. Like, you guys make my day when I hear someone share with me. I was out walking and I just listened to this episode the other day and it changed how I thought about something. So thank you, everyone. Here's 250. We'll see you in a few weeks' time for 251. Have
No
a great
pressure.